Hello! In this tutorial I'll teach you how to work with the actions or resources that you can have in the pages or to the form module. So let's log in our framework, choosing the advanced workspace and the selected projects. So the focus of this tutorial is to explain to you when you are editing a page, the type of resources that you can have, which basically you can access through here. So the actions or the resources that you can create through these actions, what are these actions, or if you go based in the form module, if you create a new block, the same thing here, that you can add your own sequential actions in here. So what I want to explain to you is what are these actions for. So basically let's start with this first one. So basically these actions allows you to get data or to set data from or to a database. So let's say the insert object into a database. It shows here, it asks to choose the correspondent broker and the correspondent driver, and then automatically from the database server, from the database diagram, and automatically here it lists the correspondent tables according with the selections that you do here above. After you select the table, it shows here the correspondent attributes according with the action that you select. So this is an insert selection, so you can insert, basically you are saying that let's insert in the school the new name and with this specific ID. If you had some updates, automatically this will be different. In this case you could say that let's update the school with ID 1 with the value, whatever the value is. Another school, whatever. If you will delete, it will only appear the specific condition. If you will get objects, it will appear the conditions if you'd like to return just one or multiple records, and then which were the attributes that you wish to return. Additionally, for all of these actions that we selected here, we can do this through an UI, where basically we can add tables and we can do our own selections through here. What we can here, we can have the specific attributes to show, we can add some conditions where basically I will say that I just want to have the schools where the ID is equal to 1. Or I could do the SQL automatically, which by default it converted me the SQL that I had here in this UI, but I could just type some SQL if I wanted to, and I could then convert it back to the UI if I wish to. As you could see, it updated me here the number 2. So basically this is the action, these database actions. Then we have the broker actions. Broker actions, it's where you can call, in this case you can call a business logic service, where you click in this button here, you choose the correspondent service here. Currently we don't have any service, but if we had, you click it here, you click update, and automatically it will fill all these fields in here automatically. And then you just needed to make a few changes according with your needs. Same thing for the IBatish rules. Basically to show here the correspondent IBatish rules, we currently don't have any. Well, as a matter of fact, we have in the module, so I can just show you in here. So let's say that I want to get a specific action. So I do update and automatically fills me up all of these and say, okay, this rule receives this specific attribute. So what is the value that I want to put here? So I want to get the action with ID 1, example. So for the business logic rules, let's do the same thing in here, so you can just see an example. Where in here maybe I want to get this action, I do update and automatically it shows me, it fills all these fields automatically. For the hibernate rule is exactly the same thing, where basically I can call a specific rule based in this UI. In this case I want to have this one, with the action number 1. This is just examples that I'm showing. You can edit all these fields separately, or you can do this automatically. Then we can get some SQL results, where in here you just write some SQL, something like this. If you know how to write SQL, this is a get, so this will return some values. You execute this SQL in the database and return the corresponding values. If I want to set some query, I needed to choose this action, set SQL query, where in here school, where in here I'll just put it something like this. In this case, this will only return true or false, that the results of these actions. I can put here the names. This will be like status, example. In the other one, if I choose these ones, probably it will be schools. But this is just an example. Then I could call a function from some file that I could just search from here, or I could call object methods. In here we can call a method from a specific objects. Where it will automatically load the specific arguments. Where in here I could say do this for this variable that I set before. Let's say that this action, I have another action before this one, and I have another variable with the specific text, and that variable calls str. So I can just put here str. This is just an example. I could call REST services, so services from a REST protocol from some remote server. I just need to fill up here the corresponding information. I could call a SOAP connector, a SOAP service too, from a remote server. I just needed to fill up here the corresponding information. Then I had some other actions, which this one basically show me an OK message. This one show me a message and stop to execute this sequential action. So if I have other actions after this, it won't execute it. This one it will show the message and then it will die. So even if this form, if this form is inside of a page and that page has the other blocks, if I have die, the system will die completely. So it just show this message, you'll stop the execution completely. Then I have the show OK message and redirect to an URL. Then I have the same thing for, but instead showing OK message, it will show error messages. And then I have something similar that is not OK or error, it's alert messages. Exactly the same thing. For the redirect URLs, if I click here, I can select a page that I have already in my project. And I have other actions, so I can refresh a page. I can redirect to another page. I can return to the previous result. So basically, if I have, in the case that, let's say that I got a service, business logic service, that basically it got me a bunch of actions. In this case, it will, let's say that these will be get actions. I believe it should be like get all actions, exactly. Okay. And in here will be actions. So I have this new variable, then I add a new action, and in here I'll add then the return previous record. So if I put here records variables name, so it was the actions that I create, and then index variable name. So I can put here the specific index of that action and automatically to return that specific record previously of this indexed. I have the next record and I have a specific record. So in here, if I put 1, it will return the result 1. If I put next, it will return the corresponding result in the index number 2, and if I put the previous, it will return the corresponding index, the corresponding record of the index 0. Then I can include files that I can search in from here a bunch of files, or I can just write here directly, say that if I want to include it once or not. Then I can design some HTML through a what you see, what you get editor. In here I can add containers, I can add fields, I can add a pagination, I can add tables, I can add trees, and each of these elements has their own properties that I can then select. So basically this is like what you see, what you get editor to build HTML. And then I can print here dynamic objects, so I can build my own HTML based in objects, and then I can show specific objects that I have before in here. So let's say that, let's delete this, and let's say that I have the actions list in here. This is a list with a bunch of actions. I want to show this, so I can create here a table where basically what I'll do, I'll say that the input data will be the actions file, and then I can add in here fields, which basically in this field here will have the value which will be, let's say for that record, the actions has an action ID and a name, something like that. So basically I do this and automatically this will print a column. If I want the second column, I needed to click here, so it could show me one column with the action ID and another column with the name. Basically I'll have a table showing that specific actions lists that I got from this business logic service. Then I can have some code to execute. If I know PHP, I can just execute some code, or I can get result from an array. So in here I can build my own array with sub arrays inside, or I can get a result from a string. So I can put here, let's say status, and this will be one. I want to create a new variable called my name, and in here I just put, this is a string, so I can write whatever I want to, and I'll just put my name. Or a result from a variable, where in here I just put the variable. Let's say that this is a local variable and it's called actions, whatever. It could be some other name. So basically this is passing this name to this, pass the value of this variable to this one here. Or I could sanitize a variable. So let's say that this variable has some inputs from the users, and when I'm sanitizing, basically I am removing the JavaScript inside of that input because of XSS attacks, because of security issues. So what we do is we can sanitize a variable. We can check for the logged user permissions, where based in the logged user or based in some other user that we put here the corresponding user. So in this case this will be a global variable, and if we want to be the logged user, so we just do logged user ID. Based in this user here, I can check if this user has a bunch of permissions. Let's say that I want this user to have these or these permissions, or if I want both, I needed to select this here. Then I can create a list report based in a variable which we created, which was the actions variable. So we can just put here actions. Based in this variable, I want to create a text delimiter file or a CSV or an Excel file with some name, actions, my actions, something like that. Basically we will create a file called my actions which will print this variable here. and then I can say that I want to stop and I just want to print this file, or I can continue my execution with other actions below. So I have continue, stop or die, depending of where this form is called. Then I have a call a block, so inside of here I can call a block. So let's say that I have in the show advanced items, currently I don't have any blocks, but let's say I have a block here that does something, so I can include that block here and put it in some variable, which can return some HTML or can simply do some action to do that can input something in the database or get something in the database and have their own logic, and it will return like a result, and that result I can just put in some variable. This is just an example. I can simply call blocks. In here I can call blocks from my current project or from other projects, or I can just go here and call the corresponding blocks. Currently there is nothing to show because there are no blocks. Or I can draw a graphic. Basically by filling this information it should draw me a graphic. Where basically in here I can draw one or more graphics. I have multiple types of graphics that I can draw. Or I can create a loop. So basically in here inside now I can add sub actions, where in here I can create my own loop saying I want to start with 0 and I want this to loop 5 times, and automatically basically this will loop this task that I have here, these actions I have here 5 times, something like that. Or I can just group a bunch of actions into a specific group name. So this is useful because in here each action has this option here that you can select when that action should be executed. So I can say that only execute this group of actions if this variable doesn't exist, or if this variable exists, or if this post button was clicked, or if the previous action was executed correctly, or if a specific condition, in here it's called a specific condition, it is valid, or if it is invalid. Or so basically as a bunch of conditions here that you can choose to say that that will execute or not the specific action. And basically that's it. So you have a bunch of actions that you can create, and then you can put the results into variables. This is in the form module. This is exactly the same then in the resources of the pages, exactly the same actions. Additionally, it's important to say too that what I explained here was just an example, so maybe there were some inputs that I input in some fields that they were not correct. This was just to show you examples. And additionally, another thing that I need to explain to you, which is every time that you see something like this, let me show you something like this, hash, and then you have some name here, hash, it means that this it will be replaced by the system by the corresponding value of this variable. So this means that there is a variable name with some value and it will replace this with that specific value. But it's just better if you just click here and automatically you put the correspondence, you fill the corresponding fields, and automatically it will fill up with the correct syntax. But this is just an example, so you can have this type of syntax like in here, or you can have directly in here. So automatically the system will replace this name here, this hashtag name hashtag, this code, with the corresponding value. So let's say that in here, let's say that I have a variable here with some name like this resource name and then JP, something like that. And if I do this, well, in this case, since it's a resource, I needed to do something like this, but basically the system will replace this code here with the JP string. So every time that I see hashtag some string hashtag, it means that there's a variable with that will be replaced with the specific value. And that's it. So thank you very much.